Hey everyone, how you doing? Welcome to the London Needs You Alive webinar with myself, Amani Simpson, and Ellis, Witter. Yes, thank you for having us. Thank you for watching London Needs You Alive. Thank you for supporting and putting us on the platform in order to make sure that we spread the messages that we have. Firstly, I think it's important for me to introduce myself. As I said, my name is Amani Simpson. I have created a short film about my life. So 7 years ago, I was stabbed 7 times in an attack, and it completely rocked my world. I went through a period of post-traumatic stress and, really rebuilding myself up. After a period of starting a property business and then going kind of through the motions of trying to refine my purpose, I was introduced to Javan Wade, a good friend of mine, and I call him a brother now. And yeah, basically we have created a short film that we hope to impact young people, especially with the narrative of the increase of youth violence. And that's my intro, and leave it to Ellis to introduce himself.
Okay, my name is Ellis Witter, and I play the younger version of Amani.
Yeah. I feel like you're not doing yourself justice, mate.
Well, there's not much to it. I can't really give that much until it's out and then people understand my role.
Okay.
So literally I'm just gonna keep it short and blunt.
Okay. Before I go into it, I think that one of the reasons I asked Ellis to be on the webinar, not just because he's in the film, but I think he offers a perspective as a young person growing up that isn't necessarily involved in some of the youth violence that's going on. So I guess it's important to see how that affects you. How do you feel growing up, seeing all of, how old are you first and foremost?
I'm 17.
Okay, so you're in and around the kind of ages that are going through this issue. How do you feel about it?
Well, it's a bit upsetting, but we need to do better. It's very upsetting to turn on the news and see another person is stabbed or there's been whatever happened to them, and they interview their parents and they're like, yo, we need to do more.
Mm-hmm.
We need to do more. We need to change this. This shouldn't be happening in the first place. And I feel like at a certain point of time, people are just like, oh, it's another one, another stabbing, another shooting. No one really talks about how do we change this?
Yeah.
How do we stop these people from stabbing other people or shooting other people? Why are they even carrying this? How are they getting access to this?
So do you feel scared on the street yourself when you walk around? Obviously you're active, you go to different places, and do you feel like you're threatened by the environments that you're walking into or the different areas you're passing through?
I feel that there's a sense of fear, but I think that goes for everyone. There's a sense of fear when walking to certain places and looking around thinking, oh, I don't really want to be here. I just want to get to from A, I want to get to B. But there's always going to be that sense of fear, the sense of unknowing, not knowing what's going to happen. But it's that fear does increase.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in terms of your upbringing, obviously I know your upbringing, and to a certain extent it's similar to mine, in terms of having a loving family and an environment where they encourage you to reach your potential and allow you to follow your dreams from an early age. What do you think is the difference? No, actually, let me rephrase that. Let me not ask that question just yet. I'm gonna go into it a little bit later.
Yeah.
What I would actually ask you is, what do you think needs to happen now? What do you think one of the solutions is from your perspective, as a young person? What do you think is one of the solutions?
I think the world's too negative about it. I think, yes, it's a negative thing that's happening, but I think we focus on a negative and we don't focus on a positive.
Okay.
So there's a lot of positivity happening around the world that's not getting the attention that I feel should be justified by it. So as example, for your thing, you've created a short film about your life. There's something that happened to you that's absolutely horrible and that should never have happened that shouldn't never happen to no one. But the way you've changed your life around, I feel like people need to shed more light on things like that. But we shared like you turn on the news and just think, oh, another one, or we don't. I don't think we're that positive about things. We come home and we're slouched and we're like, oh, what's on now? That would do. I don't think we're that positive as a nation, and we should shed a lot more light on the positive things rather than give light to the negative things that are happening.
So I partially agree with you. The part I disagree with you about is that it shouldn't have happened. It needed to happen to me because I've got the resilience inside of me in order to fight back and to be on this side of the table and say, look, this is what's happened to me. These are the mistakes I made, and to steer other people away from that, because there's some people that have been through the same situations that then turn to revenge or then turn to, kind of this shell of themselves. And I needed that to find my purpose. It's very easy to follow a road that that no one's ever kind of challenged you to come away from, and so sometimes you need that shock moment in order to really find the person that you're meant to become. So I feel it's a blessing in disguise. It may not have felt like that at the time, but yeah, definitely I think in the future, so now looking back in hindsight, it's definitely something that I'm glad I went through. So what I'm going to do now, because one of the things that we've, obviously we're doing with this webinar is taking you guys on a journey. So I'm gonna tell my story, and basically just, I guess, walk you guys through the causes that led me up to getting stabbed. So as I mentioned originally, I grew up in a family where my mum and dad loved me to bits. I was my mum's miracle child in that sense that they kind of said that she wouldn't probably be able to have me, and so she loved me with everything that she had. And I think obviously my dad loved me as well. And for me, going into a school environment, there's a lot of other components that you can't really ever prepare your child for. So things like bullying, things like peer pressure, things like inclusion, things like learning to adapt to the school environment, or conducting yourself in a particular way. So I feel like when I started school in year one, firstly, and then again in year 7, I wasn't prepared for what school would hit me with. So the experiences that I had were a little bit more negative than maybe some other people started in school and I started within school. And I think that for me, I slowly started to almost drift away. So I started to, it starts off with you being a little bit rude.
Yeah.
And then it starts off with you, being more rude. And then it starts off with you becoming that
gradual process
exactly.
Okay.
So for me, it's more so, I gave you the book the other day, The Compound Effect.
Yes.
And the idea about the compound effect, for anyone that hasn't read that, is how small things multiplied over time have a massive effect. So I'll give you an example. If I, let me give you an example. What example can I give you that's going to make sense? Actually, you read the book. Give me an example.
Yes.
This is the homework now.
Yes, this is okay. So something like, okay, let's go with reading the book as well. If we read 10 pages a day, 5-10 pages a day, and the book is 100 pages, that overall leads to that massive effect. Because I don't think you can, well, some people do, but in my view, you can read a book and read about 60 pages in a day or 40 pages in a day and not actually process that information. You're just like going through like, yes, okay.
So yeah, have you finished, sir?
No. Yeah, so you go through those pages and think, yeah, okay, cool, understand it, but you don't process it. So with the compound effect, I think, the small little steps, just you keep doing it, the multipliers makes a massive difference. Okay.
So I think that's a good example. I'll give you another example as well to add on to what Ellis has said. So it's almost like liken it to someone starting out at the start of their life. And so a lot of people in school want to be comfortable. They want to fit in. They want to conform. They don't necessarily have their own kind of principles that they're happy to stick by, whether that be the things that their parents have taught them, whether that be the things that they believe about themselves. And slowly what happens is they start drifting, and it's small little things, very, very incremental things that, you know, small things. As I said, you start being rude, you then start to become known as, a child with attitude. You start, getting to the point where you have completely changed your behavior and your attitude towards things, and you don't even realize it. You know, you can't even see it happening in front of you because it's so incrementally small. And then before you know it, you find yourself in a situation where, like for myself, I was getting kicked out of school, I was getting kicked out of class, I was known as the disruptive one, and all of that stemmed from me just trying to fit in with the cool kids in school. And there's nothing wrong with that to a certain extent, but when that then starts to change me as a person, I started school playing the violin. And, playing the violin was something that I really enjoyed doing when I first started. That's how I got into my school. But when I suddenly discovered that that wasn't cool, I was then not, I guess, secure enough in myself in order to stay with the violin and say, I don't care what anyone else thinks. I'm willing to drift and to follow what everyone else is doing. And essentially, sometimes you end up following people off a cliff because they don't know where they're going.
Yeah.
And so, I fast forward into many years later. And again, after getting kicked out of school, you then start another school thinking, okay, this is another opportunity. But very soon, these habits, it's all about the power of habits. And, some of the kids that are involved in some of these problems now, they are very much caught up in bad habits. And we need to try and break that cycle. And it's easy to talk to them and say, look, you guys need to break the cycle and in the theory, but we need to give them practical ways to do that. So to show them how their habits, again, multiplied over time, can have a massive adverse effect for them. Because as I said, if you look at starting school and trying to be comfortable, later on, a lot of the time it leads you to being uncomfortable later on in life. So a lot of the guys that, for example, that maybe I went to school with or, are in my kind of age group, some of them were very popular when we were younger. But then due to them kind of drifting and becoming complacent and not challenging themselves to grow, some of them have then ended up in jail. Some of them have ended up in situations that they're not happy to, or that, that it's not a positive situation. And they're uncomfortable. Whereas there's some people in school, you see it all the time, that have, I guess to a certain extent, they may have had a rough start in school. They must have had, they may have had a situation where, they were bullied at an early age. And so it became very much about survival for themselves, where they then turn around and say, do you know what, actually, I don't care about the world. As much as I'm having a hard time, I'm going to just focus on myself and I'm just going to focus on development. And what you find is that sometimes later on in life, these guys are actually in a better position. They're more comfortable because they've actually gone through that uncomfortable stage early on in life. And that's kind of where I find myself now. Although, I had various different stages of my life where I was uncomfortable and now I feel like I'm a little bit more comfortable in myself. It's still something that, it's difficult to put into words when you're 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. You can't really explain that to someone because to them, the most important thing is fitting in. I just wanted to have friends. I just wanted to be invited to people's parties and, feel like people wanted me around. And so therefore I'm willing to compromise on everything. So I then move on from that point and I say, look, do you know what? Going into a new school and trying to do all of those things, where does that leave me?
Yeah.
What am I aspiring to be? And especially being at that age where maybe it was a lot easier to slip under the radar, some of these problems. Bullying was starting to become more of a buzzword, more of something that people were trying to combat. But at the same time, it was very much something that people just, it was just part of school life.
Yeah.
And I think we don't realize the effect that can have on someone at an early age. 100%. And then, when we're now looking at some of these scenarios, we have to go back to the causes and say, actually, what is it that has caused this person to be like that? Have you got any examples from your recollection of anyone in school that may have had something like that you could see a shift, without naming anyone's name, but just you can see a shift of their behavior?
I can think of a couple people. I don't know them in such that we used to be close friends and we used to hang out all the time, but I knew them as a fact that you go to the same school as me, you're in the same class, I know you. And I could sort of see, you know, when you see people do these kind of things, you just think, why are you doing that? What are you doing? And it takes a while for you to sort of like understand like where they might be coming from. Because what I do, I try to see from their side.
Yeah.
So rather than me sticking to my side and being, I don't like you or this and that, I need to understand why. And I need to see what made them the way that they are now. So could it be bullying? Could it be you know, whatever the cause might be, let's
home life, something like that. Yeah,
anything like that. So
because I mean, you know, now in hindsight, when I look at some of the people that I was aspiring to be like when I was, you know, 13 or 11 onwards, for me, I don't know their background. I don't know what they're dealing with at home. My situation at home was maybe a little bit more normalized, maybe a little bit more I want to say palatable, but you know, I didn't have some of the issues that maybe some of my peers dealt with. But because I don't know that, all I'm seeing is the confidence on face value, which is attractive, especially when you're young, black in London. Street culture is, you know, it's very attractive. You know, you see the guys that are a little bit more edgy, a little bit more rude, the girls like them. And when you've got the testosterone kind of going and you're learning to be a man, that's the stuff that you aspire to have. You say, okay, I want to have girls like me. And so what does that look like? You have to have a little bit of a bad boy image. And again, as I said, it starts off as something small like that. It starts off as something small where you aspire to just have that kind of level of attention and that kind of reputation or that kind of respect on your name. And what you don't realize is that slowly, as I mentioned before, you start drifting. And so for me, I think what's important is trying to identify these things, especially from a teacher's perspective, which is, I know, one of the main kind of the audience that we have on this webinar. I think one of the things that I would have loved to have at an early age is forums for me to talk without feeling like I'm snitching on my peers, because it's not necessarily about them. It's not about me trying to get them into trouble. It's about me trying to make the most of my future. So when I look at where I may be kind of, I could have potentially ended up if someone had intervened and said, Amani, like, you know, why are you behaving like this? And almost trying to, I want to say coerce me, because again, that's not the right terminology, but almost trying to help me realize that actually I'm just trying to follow a particular type of audience, and that's not really, that's not me. And almost showing me my potential from an early age. I think teachers and youth practitioners, they have a very unique relationship with children at a young early age. You can either, as they say, you can either take the fish to water. No, sorry, you can take a horse to water and force it to drink, or you can teach it how to find the water and drink for itself. And I think sometimes teachers don't really empower kids to think for themselves. They might empower them when it comes to education, but that's something that is based on the child. I think a lot of the time we need to really empower young people to think for themselves when it comes to taking responsibility, when it comes to thinking about their future, when it comes to setting the goals for themselves. And again, this is conversations we're having now at a later stage in life, but these conversations weren't really had when I was in school. No one sat down with me. It was just kind of you're on your own. If you're misbehaving, then we're just going to kick you out of class because you're disrupting. You're just kind of getting to a stage where we don't want you here because it's harder for us to try and help you at this stage. So it's easier for us to kind of kick you out so that we can focus on the 29 other kids. But at the same time, I like to always look at both sides. It's a difficult place for teachers to be as well. They've got a job to do. And if you've got someone that's disruptive in a class, yes, the easiest thing at that moment is to say, please step out of my classroom because I can't handle you right now. But then unless you're going back after to try and build that link with that young person and try and build that level of communication where you're trying to actually get to the root of it rather than just discipline them and trying to kick them out of the class, I feel like you're missing a trick there. You're not really empowering them. You're just kind of almost perpetuating the anger that they may have inside, because a lot of it is fueled of anger. I was very angry when I was younger, very angry, very much about, why is this happening to me? But I didn't know how to articulate that. So, I mean, I think think it's difficult to know when you're that age what you want.
Yeah.
But I think as an adult, and one of the things that I aspire to do, as I've mentioned quite a few times, is to empower. So, for example, speaking to you, I know that you want to do acting.
Yes.
And you set enough, you've kind of broken enough ground in your own mind to say that that's what you want to do. You're not going to sway away from that. And so for me, as an older person to you, I want to empower you to be an actor. That might, I'm going to then challenge you, and I'm going to say, why do you want to be an actor? If you're just, I just want to do it for money, then that's not really the answer. If you're like, I want to be an actor because I want to be able to be on a platform to change the world, that's a completely different conversation. And I think these are the things that we need to almost kind of pull out of young people.
100%.
Would you? Yeah, you agree? Yeah?
100%. Yeah.
Your upbringing in school, how was it? Let me not put words in your mouth. How was it growing up?
I consider myself as sort of like an outcast. So I was there, but I was not popular. I was there if you needed something. So what I used to do is, again, to impress and try and make a name for myself, I used to bring in a lot of food.
Food is in clarify.
Okay, food is
because food means two different
food
things.
is in snacks, so like Haribos and all of that
cool.
stuff. Yeah. So I used to bring a lot of food in, and people in school know that if they're hungry, see what Ellis has. Where's Ellis? He's got food. Do you know what I mean? And that was just to make a name for myself. So yeah, I used to go around and here's some food. Here's food. I can see that you're hungry. I can hear that you're hungry. Here's some food. And it got to the point where I built a reputable name for myself, but I sort of see it now as a wrong reason.
Okay.
As in, I was sort of used. I was there. I used to spend a lot of money on this, just to be liked, just to be appreciated, and
it's almost compromising on yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I knew, I get home and look at the money and just think, I spent that on food.
It doesn't really. Yeah. It doesn't almost satisfy that attention or that satisfaction that you're looking for, right? It won't say satisfy, but yeah, no, I can relate to that because as I've mentioned a few times, you end up compromising on the person that you compromise on your potential for acceptance, and at an early age, especially with I didn't grow up in a generation of social media like that. We had MSN, but that wasn't really, you could create a profile and you could just you could sit there and be quiet for ages. Instagram now is very much about every day posting a particular image. Yeah. So on top of that, I can imagine it's a lot harder for your generation, because you're dealing now not just with some of these issues that we're mentioning, but more so about now this profile that you have to portray to people on a wider scale. How do you think that affects you as a young person now?
On a wider scale, okay, so I'm going to relate it back to the secondary school and leading up to that. So from secondary school, again, as an outcast, I saw myself, you can see people posting these pictures and just think, I wish I had that.
You think it's pressure?
Yeah, I wish I had that. There's something to aspire to, but it's also pressure. I wish I had this certain quality in me, or I wish I was clever. I wish I was this. I wish I was liked.
What does that do to you at that age?
Oh, it's hurtful. It's very hurtful. You don't speak about it, or a lot of people don't realize it, but it has a massive effect on you. Just that thought of feeling alone of, man, I don't feel like I'm worth it, or I don't know what I want to do. This is what I want to do, but I don't know how I'm going to get there, because that's what they portray in schools. They say, what do you want to be? And I said, an actor. And I was like, okay, that's great. How are you going to get there? Don't really know. I just want to be an actor. I'll make a way.
So how do you think, obviously, speaking about the social media influences that now is part of your generation, how do you think that teachers and youth practitioners can help you almost to counteract that pressure that you find at that age? What do you think they can do?
That's a tough question. I think we need to be a lot more vigilant. I think that we need to see that these people idolize us.
What do you mean?
For example, the platform that you are on now, you're well known. You're very well known.
Getting there.
Getting there. Okay. So say if there's someone out there who looks at you and think, oh my gosh, I want to meet him. I want to talk to him. I want to have that chance to interact with him on whatever level.
But then that doesn't necessarily, for me, not to take away from what you just said, but that doesn't necessarily answer the question. Because for me, I'm also looking at the young people that are, the teachers and facilitators that are working with these young people, that are seeing these narratives, these pressures that are put on young, end of the day, we're talking about young people killing themselves and what the causes of that are. And so what is it, what can be done at an early intervention stage from your point of view in order for someone to almost steer young people away from that, from when they start seeing some of these signs?
Okay, I think it's a 50-50. I think that there needs to be that option of, if you need something, you need to talk or need to vent or whatever, come here, come to this place, or come to this site of school to talk and, get advice. And then again, from the youth perspective, I think we need to make this clear. I think as hard as it is, we need to talk about it.
Okay. So you mean as a young person, you need to speak about it?
As a young person, yeah. Okay. We need to learn how to speak about our feelings, because as much as we hold inside, we need to let it go.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. I think a lot of it does come down to the way that we, as young people, myself as a previous young person in that sense, is how we communicate our frustrations.
Yeah.
Because essentially, there's times when my mum tried to talk to me, and she was trying to steer me down a particular positive path, but because I'm almost trying to keep up a reputation, I'm like, no, it's all right, nothing's wrong. And that's not necessarily helpful, because then what that does is I can then turn around and be angry at my mum later on in life and say, oh, you don't care and you're always talking, but she's tried to help me. So I think, I definitely agree with you. What I would also say, and add to what you said before, is I think we need, I think it's cliche to say this, but we need more relatable, positive role models. So you need people that are, that have been there. It's great to talk to a teacher, to talk to some of the mentors that are in school now, but I think we need to almost shift that and go to people that have experience, not just qualifications, and know how you feel. So to be able to turn around and say, I've been where you are, not just I'm thinking about the theory of where you are, and this is what I believe from my textbook that I should be saying to you right now. I think it has to come from a level of empathy. Is that the right word? I think empathy is probably not the right word, but a level of I've been there.
Yeah.
Because I think if I had someone at my age that said, you know what, Amani, you trying to fit into this crowd isn't going to get you anywhere, because I've been there. I've been kicked out of school off the back of that. I've been in the situation off the back of that. And these are the different things that I put in place in order to make sure that I was able to move away from that. Where that didn't really happen, you're kind of left to your own devices. So I know I've kind of diverted quite a lot, but I'll fast forward. After getting kicked out of school, I then went and sold drugs in county lines. I then, I got arrested before, went to care, then went to county lines. And this is all off the back of getting kicked out of school, and all off the back of building a particular reputation as a young man who was hard to reach, or was disruptive. And really, if we look at the core, it was just acceptance. It was just trying to feel wanted by my peers, not even necessarily your parents. It's just more so being in school, and where you spend so much time in the school environment, it's wanting to be accepted there.
Yeah.
It's wanting to be part of the cool crowd, and it's wanting to be part of, something that seems on face value to be everything that you're ever going to need in life. But coming from this perspective as an older person, I can tell you that it's hollow. There's no foundation to some of the things that young people follow. And so I go back to the point I mentioned before in terms of trying to find positive role models that young people can relate to come back and say, actually, I've been there, and I can tell you it doesn't take you anywhere. And I feel like, especially after everything that I've experienced before I got stabbed, you know, if I had someone at that stage, I probably would have turned my life around a lot quicker. Because the time that I actually did turn my life around is when I had a mentor who looked at me and said, you know what, you've got potential. He didn't necessarily tell me about his background, but he showed me my potential and said to me, look, do you know what, actually, everything that you've done prior to this, I'm not going to take into consideration from a negative perspective. It's what you do from this point forward that I will take on, and I will look and I will judge you on. And I think sometimes that is what I think school, sometimes you can build up a reputation and almost like sometimes create a hardened like response to you. So, it's just Amani again being disruptive. Whereas I don't need to hear that when I'm that age. I need someone to keep pushing through and keep trying to get me, because once that person gives up on me, I've been blessed to be able to have other people to come back and give me that love and support and that guidance. But there's many kids, you're seeing it now in the news, that probably don't have someone that's looking out for them like that. And so I feel like, especially where school has such a big impact on the day-to-day lives of some of these kids, there needs to be more done in the school environment to support them and to engage them and to help them find aspirations that are viable, not just football and music, because that's not for everybody. You know, there's a lot of smart kids that are almost selling themselves short by following a dream that, you know, the percentage of success is very, very small. Right? Even acting, not to take away from what it is, but it's very small. It's very, very small. You know, the people that actually make it, that make careers out of the thing, is very small. And we can always say, oh, that's great, Johnny, you want to be an actor, or you want to be a footballer, you want to be a musician. But are we challenging them on that? And are we offering them other ways to use some of the skills that they have? And from an early age, if that was something that was maybe introduced to me and maybe some of my peers, or maybe some of the young people that are going through some of these things, I think that maybe their trajectory would be a bit different. So, I mean, I know we've been talking for a little period of time. I'm gonna go to some of the questions and then kind of link back in before we wrap up. So do you guys think that wanting to be cool and accepted is the biggest driver for getting in with the wrong crowd? Yeah.
I wouldn't say the biggest.
I wouldn't.
It's a major drive.
It is a major drive. Because essentially wanting to be liked at an early age, there's nothing wrong with that. There's a level of acceptance that you definitely want to have, but there's other factors. Is you know, you some of these kids are going through some complete madnesses at home. You know, domestic violence, poverty, you know, emotional abuse, physical abuse. When I say domestic violence, I mean witnessing domestic violence rather than being victims of it. And these things all play into it. But I definitely feel that the idea of wanting to be accepted comes after you experience those things. So you almost have to tackle those things at the root sometimes as well.
Yes, you do. Yeah.
There's another question there. So what drives a cool crowd to do bad stuff? Are they following stuff in the media because it looks cool? Do you think they just want to be disruptive or something else? So yeah, I've had this conversation with a few people. I definitely believe that the media plays a massive part, not just the kind of the commercial media like the newspapers and stuff, but also youth media. So there's a lot of platforms that young people are engaged with right now, music platforms, entertainment platforms, whatever you want to call them. And the only content that's put on there is negative content. That's it, you know. And so someone said to me the other day, when it comes to drill music, which I know is a big hot topic right now, would we listen to music about child abuse every day the way that we listen to music about violence every day? We wouldn't.
No.
It would make us sick. But we, as young people, and you know, our generation, we listen to music that glorifies violence, and I'm going to kill you, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. So I think that definitely perpetuates the issue, but it's not the sole cause of violence or why young people are doing that. Again, it's deeper than that.
Yes,
it's deeper than that. There's a lot of things that happen before you get to that stage. You know, a lot of things that young people are exposed to and are influenced by that will have a massive effect on the decisions that they make.
And also, I'd say that as I think that we have to take a bit of responsibility for who we follow online, because there's how many accounts on Instagram, and if you're following accounts that post these type of negative content, then that's only going to play with your mind. If you follow positive content, if you you know what I mean, if you're sharing it as well, you know, wishing people good day, it's simple things like that, I think that could go a long way.
So let me ask you a question. What would you say is the type of positive content that young people need to see now?
See, that's a broad question, because that's a lot of positivity, but then again, it's what they want to see.
Okay, but all right. So let me rephrase it. What would you, as a young person, like to see on your timeline more regularly?
People doing good things, just people helping other people, simple things like that. Compliments.
Okay.
Random messages. How are you doing? I hope you're doing well.
But are you talking in terms of from you personally? I'm talking about from these platforms, because I feel like these platforms have a lot to answer for when it comes to what is put in front of young people. So that's what I mean more so, rather than your personal messages.
With these platforms, I think it's down to them, because they own the platform that they post on. So they can post literally whatever they want.
So I think what I'm getting from you, correct me if I'm wrong, is that, well, no, what I'm getting from you, not even correct me if I'm wrong, this is what I'm reading into what you're saying, is that number one, these platforms have to take responsibility, but knowing the fact that they most likely probably won't, because it's the things that will be paying their bills, there needs to be an alternative, a positive alternative. Okay, cool.
I think we need to see a lot more positivity rather than negative.
Cool. So what I would probably wrap up with before I get people to start asking questions is the reason why I'm even on here right now with Ellis is because we've created a film, and the film is meant to be used as a tool to go into schools, to impact young people, and to start conversations like this. You've been a fly on the wall of this conversation, and this is something that we need to do more of. We don't need to talk at young people, because young people have opinions. Yes, sometimes young people don't know how to articulate themselves. In my mind, sometimes some of them they fall short of that and they don't know what they want. But having more conversations like this, we can extract little gems that will allow us as elders or youth leaders and stuff like that to really impact their lives. Because I feel like there's not enough conversations like this on public forums or in school environments or anything like that. I think we need to really increase this.
Even that, I don't think there's enough conversations between friends and families alone, because a lot of people have bottled up emotions, and when you could say something like you don't mean, or having a joke, and that one person could take it to heart, and then they could just let out everything they have bottled inside. So I think we need to start talking about it.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think you're definitely you're right. We need to definitely start talking about it, and I think the age that we really need to start talking to young people about this is as early as possible, because you know, there's a lot of young people now, and again, young people is such a generic word, but there's a lot of kids now that are being influenced by things at a much earlier age. So, you know, year 4, year 5, year 6, going into secondary school, there's some kids that have already been exposed to a lot of stuff because they're very vulnerable. So teachers, I believe, need to start speaking to these children in an environment that allows them to have that level of trust with them, where they don't feel like there's going to be a crazy consequence behind it. It's more so having a very general conversation to allow them to start tapping into their own thoughts and emotions, rather than kind of steering them away to try and get an immediate outcome. Because again, I go back to my point at the beginning about the compound effect. It's those small conversations that will allow a young person to find themselves quicker. If you just get someone at the end where they've already been influenced so much by the world, you're just going to go in one ear and come out the other. Whereas I feel like if you slowly start these conversations from early, you know, look how society has inducted sexual health into school culture. now we are much more aware of sexual health at an early age.
Yeah.
Whereas I think this is now a conversation that we need to start having from an early age in terms of, the influences that we have, the aspirations that we have as young people, starting to look at, what it is that we're actually allowing ourselves to be involved in. If we can start having these conversations early, I think that we'll start to really counteract some of the negative pathways that young people are going down. So I'm going to start reading a couple more questions. Amani, when you were going down a bad route, did teachers and other responsible adults reach out to you, and how did they, and were you receptive? If not, why not? I think at that point where I started to talk where teachers started to talk to me, it was a little bit too late. So the first time I got kicked out of school was year 2. And again, as I said, me getting kicked out in year 2 was something that was avoidable. If you'd asked me why I got kicked out because someone had done something to me and I reacted. And if you go to the cause of that, yes, okay, maybe I shouldn't have reacted like that, but labeling me from there and putting me in that position of being a bad child from there, I played up to my reputation. That's essentially it. I'm not blaming anyone else for that. I still have to take responsibility. But, for me, going down a bad route was more so, for me, having a teacher talk to me at that age, having a teacher talk, I'm tongue-tied. Having a teacher talk to me at that age would have probably allowed me to, as I said, become aware of the directions I could have gone in. And not just talking at me, talking with me. I think there's a difference. It's not what you say, it's how you say it, and it's the times that you say it. So for me, when I look at teachers trying to speak to me as I got older, they were talking at me, because at that age I'm so hardened to life, and I'm so angry, and I'm so stuck in my ways that I don't care what you've got to say at that point. I'm not trying to hear what you've got to say at that point. I'm just on my own thing, and you're just a person in authority that I hate. So I'm not trying to hear that from you. So again, it's not to say that you can't break through to some of those kids, but sometimes at that stage, it's not for you as a teacher, a person in authority, to speak to them. It's for someone that they can relate to speaking to them. Someone that has been there, that comes with experience, that isn't coming from a position of authority or trying to achieve a particular outcome, but more so trying to build a relationship of trust. And so someone like a mentor, for example, someone that you build a relationship with over a period of time, that isn't necessarily on an agenda to to try and find an answer to a problem that's in school, but trying to allow you to be empowered to think like that without them being there. So, for me, having people to speak to in school that are not just teachers is very key. What do you think? So I know I've answered a couple of questions. I was just going to answer
another question. What age do you think we need to start talking to young people?
I think I answered that already, actually. What do you want to answer the one underneath?
Who would be the best people to communicate with young people? Police?
Yeah.
Okay.
You take that one.
I wouldn't say police, because the amount that they have on their plate is crazy, and we're just adding more. I mean, I get that we need to talk to it, but I don't think the police are the right people to talk to. I think I think we need to start talking about this on just like forums or lives or something like that, something that we can possibly get an answer to, or a bit of advice that help us, that because we could be thinking of this like, oh my gosh, this is such a massive hurdle, and they could just shift our focus to one side and they go, oh, okay, it's not that big. Or look at it from a different way, that think, okay, I know how to tackle and approach this now. So I think things like that could really help.
I think, and I would agree with you. I think to answer that question directly in terms of do I think police can communicate with young people? No, because there's such, not to say that all police are the same, and I don't want to tarnish police because they have a difficult job to do, but there's a lot of police that abuse their power. It's as simple as that. We're sitting in situations now where young people don't trust the police for whatever reason. That's what I was, especially young black boys. You bring a policeman in a room and their back goes up. I've got people around me that are police, and if I wasn't an adult that was able to kind of almost communicate with various different people in different backgrounds, I'm not going to communicate with the police, because I've seen many videos of police members, or police constables abusing their power, throwing young black boys on the floor, arresting them for no reason, or for what we perceive as being no reason.
You can see these videos online.
We can see these videos online. So for me, I don't think that police need to be the sole person, the sole people to speak to them, or that they're the best people. I think they need to be part of the conversation, but almost be a fly on the wall. They need to be accountable. Young people need to be able to speak at police and say, this is how I feel. This is where I feel that the police are falling short, because essentially the police are accountable to us as community. But the other thing that I would say is that young people also need to be held accountable. We can't always blame the other side. We have to take responsibility.
We have to hold our hands up.
We have to hold our hands up. And for us, again, as youth leaders and people that are in a position of influence, we need to encourage young people to take responsibility. It's easy for us to say, "Oh, take responsibility for something," but we don't know. Even me as an adult, sometimes I don't know how to own up to things. So, I definitely believe like things like personal development, and as I said, having particular role models that can allow us to emulate a particular way of thinking and way of operating will allow us to communicate better with police. And as I always say, it's you don't have to always raise your voice, you just need to raise your argument.
I'm going to add on to that.
Go on.
I think we could do a bit ourselves. So if you know you got a problem, you know you got a situation, you got to think for yourself in the sense of, how can I get around this? So books, as people I know that don't read a lot of books, they could read a couple pages and go, oh my gosh, that's really helped me.
But then what do you do? I mean, I think I always like to flip both sides. But what happens if you've never had that influence? If no one's ever told you read a book, or you struggle to do that, or you haven't been introduced to the personal development books that maybe like some of us have, what happens then? And I'm almost going to answer that.
I think you need to explore your thoughts.
How?
In a sense that, okay, so I think you should pitch yourself on another side. So if you're telling your problems to someone, let's say you have a problem with not fitting in. Okay, where do you go from that? You go from not fitting into, what do you do to fit in? Or how can I make a name for myself? How can this and that happen? And then sort of like, okay, maybe watch videos, YouTube videos, or read books, podcasts, Instagram Live, Facebook Live, talking to people, asking people for help and advice. I mean, I just named 8 things.
But then for me, and I agree with you, but for me, I also look at it from the perspective of a young person who is angry, and who all they're seeing around, and the only situations or lifestyles or choices or things that they're seeing around them, then they're probably more negative than that. They're not self-reflective things like, okay, let me think about how I can progress my life. They're not thinking that. So I would almost then answer and say, do you know what, we as leaders need to turn around and actually show young people by example. So there's teachers out there that have read books like Think and Grow Rich. These are the kind of things that need to be on the curriculum. Books like, I've got a good friend, Robin Travis, that's written a book called Prisoner to the Streets. These kind of books need to be on the curriculums. Things like The Compound Effect, things like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, things that are actually going to improve the mindsets of young people.
And inspire.
Because for me, yes, education is brilliant and it allows them to live a particular lifestyle, but it doesn't allow young people to think for themselves. And in this day and age where we now need to start thinking about really empowering young people to survive in this quite cold and dark environment that we're living in, we need to start thinking about changing some of the narratives and the literature and the content that is pushed in front of young people. I think that's a very, very big
it's a big thing, and it's a simple thing as well.
It's simple.
It's very simple.
What I'm going to do, because I think we need to wrap up in a minute, is anyone got any other questions?
Yes.
Any other questions? Anyone that's watching, feel free. You got probably a couple of minutes to type. What do you think is the root cause? You got to wrap up in a minute. Sorry, one sec. Technical difficulties. What's that? Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I'll put that in there. That's fine. Yeah. All right. So one of the questions we have: what do you think is the root cause, poverty or racism?
It's different to different people.
I think poverty is definitely a big thing, but poverty is not just an economic problem. It's definitely to do with a mindset as well. You can be poor in your mind. And again, I think it goes back to the things that you fill your mind with. If you're constantly hearing negative things and you're constantly hearing things that aren't progressing you, then it can hold you back. Yes, economic poverty definitely plays a part in the things that you see every day, but there's many people that have come from many negative situations that have then turned their life around by going through personal development. And for me, personal development is what I turned my life around with. You know, I took ownership. I started to read things. I started to research a lot more. I started to use the internet. We live in an information age where at the click of a finger or the click of a button, we can find anything. Mm-hmm. So instead of finding videos of comedy things or, you know, entertainment kind of posts and stuff like that, we have to be able to empower young people to search for different things online. And what kind of stuff do you look for?
I'd also say, just to add on to yours, I say if we can't find him, we'd find a way around it. Mm-hmm. And that's a big thing in itself. And that's displaying some skills. But anyway.
No, so let me answer the question I had then. What kind of things do you look for online? What if a young person was watching this now, what would you encourage them to try and look at?
Positive things, but that's a mad thing. But
give me an example, because I know I know you personally.
I'd say quotes.
Okay, what kind of quotes?
Help. Quotes that make you think, quotes that make you go, okay, I could do something, I could do this. So little quote, like if you want to, I don't know, work out, gain more muscles, then maybe try to do like 5 press-ups a day. Okay. It's something small, okay, but leading on, you'll see the results.
So you're talking more so about just being
I think it's just having that thought. Okay.
So again, I think obviously because I'm looking at the audience that we have now, yes, what I would say to the facilitators out there that are going to watch this, and the youth leaders and the teachers and stuff that are going to watch this, encourage your young people to search for other things online and definitely start them from an early age thinking about their future and their mindset and the content that they look at. You know, I think it's important that we are aware of the fact that young people are probably not going to change their mindsets overnight. So it goes back to the compound effect where you have to start small. Even if it's in between all the drill videos that they'll probably watch, that they watch a video of Anthony Robbins or what's the guy's name? Gary Vaynerchuk or what's his name? Thomas, what's his name? That's gonna bug you. That's gonna bug you. I can't remember his name. Someone tell me what's his name? The motivational speaker, the something Thomas. Yeah, it'll come back. Someone hit me with it. But yeah, definitely. You know, poverty, racism. These are things that are causes. These are things that are issues, the root cause issues. But these are things we can't do anything about. To a certain extent, we can fight them, but it's all about how we react to them. And so as facilitators and people in positions of influence, I think that we need to really empower young people to be able to overstand these things. And by overstand, I mean exactly that, to be able to see it and say, do you know what? That's not worth my time when it comes to racism or when it comes to poverty. This is a situation that I find myself in, but it's not the situation I have to stay in. That's what I think. Anyway, as someone that has years of experience on me now, I would look back and say that staying in that particular mindset is unacceptable when you have so much information in front of you.
Okay, I'm going to hit you with another question here. Who do you think is the most important person to help you change?
Yourself. So we you know, yes, okay, cool. You know, we can look at teachers and, as I said, the youth practitioners and the people that are in those positions of influence. But if the young person themselves doesn't want to change, then all of that just goes in one ear and comes out the other. And so the most important person in all of that is yourself. You're the person that sees out of your eyes every day, that lifts your hands and speaks and moves your legs and makes decisions every single day. So as a young person, we're the most important people to help us change. Secondary to that is, okay, the people that have influence over you. So people like your parents, people like your teachers, people like your mentors. then outside of that, it's people that have influence like entertainers or media platforms and stuff like that. But for me, I believe that it's, again, it really depends on how your mind is. If you're not looking for these things, or you're not receptive to these things, or you haven't been taught how to be receptive to these things, then none of that matters. All of that it sounds great, and there'll be some kids that will really engage with that, but until it becomes part of popular culture and everyday culture in school, when it comes to the general education system and you know, the lesson plans and the way that we encourage young people to find and to chase after their future ambitions, it's just going to be conversation. It's just going to be theory. It now needs to be put into practice. And there's so many great organizations out there that have been doing this for a long time and maybe just haven't found the right sweet spot in order to get their message across, in my opinion. Because there's people out there that have the solution. There's companies that I know that will challenge your mindset, or there's companies that will look at, you know, being how to become a man, or there's companies that will or organizations that will look at supporting the family. All these people are already there. They're already there. It's about getting these types of companies involved in schools and I guess to a certain extent starting to remove some of the red tape around that happening, because we almost, as a society, we've become very scared in engaging some of these organizations for whatever reason. And I think we've already got the answers around us. We just need to come together and have a unified front, especially from a Black community perspective. There's too much blaming everyone else. Yes. Where we have to take a lot of responsibility.
Yes.
You know, our child shouldn't be out on the street, or your child shouldn't be out on the street at 11 o'clock at night. Yes, okay, we can look at situations like you're working 2 jobs and stuff like that, but there's a level of responsibility, and there's a village. It takes a village to raise a child. So if you're not able to be there and support your child at that point, I would encourage you to try and find other people that they can engage with and they can have that relationship with that will be positive influence. And if you haven't got that, which is unfortunate, but that's the situation we're in sometimes, then it then falls onto the school environment and the youth clubs, or I say youth clubs, or the youth organizations, and you know, the people that have the ambition to help young people find their potential. So yeah, I think for me, hold on, I'm going to ask another question. What would you say to a younger self that would have made you listen? Nothing. I wouldn't say anything to them. I'd try and make myself come to the realizations.
Yeah.
I would empower me to speak.
Yes.
I'd give me the forums and the platforms to speak, and I'd give me the space to just vent and be angry and to cry and to say how I feel without feeling like this is fake or whatever. That's what I say. I wouldn't say anything to myself, because there's nothing you can really say to a younger person.
And add on to that, I think you should let them know that it's okay to vent. It's okay to express your feelings, because that's fine. Yeah, 100%. And I guess actually, you know, to not to counteract what I've said, but I guess to add on, if I had to say something, I would come from a position of honesty. So rather than getting caught up in red tape of trying to, I guess trying to be parental friendly, or, you know, trying to be a particular way, just be real with them as a young person. Real recognize real, as they say. And for me, sometimes teachers come with a front that, you know, I can't really trust you, I'm trying to get something out of it. And that's not every teacher. But if you look at the general school kind of relationships, and you see how some people react to particular teachers, there's some teachers that will never be able to talk to a young person. They're just teachers. They just talk at people. And then there's engagers that will sit down and help a young person to realize their potential and to become the person that they need to. So all I would say, I'm gonna wrap up now, because we've nearly been an hour. But I want to thank London Needs You Alive for putting us on the platform. Amani, the short film will be out. The short film will be out on the 25th of November. We will be going into schools.
So please contact us on aviard.co.uk. That's aviard.co.uk. And all the information will be on there. And follow us, of course. But on top of that, also, I think it's important for teachers to engage with the London Needs You Alive toolkit, to download it. There's some really helpful things in there. And that's not me just plugging it for the sake of being on this platform, but it's there. True. It's there to help young people to become, for you to engage with them in the best way. And I feel like, it's going to be part of the solution. But this is going to take probably another 10 years, in my opinion. We're really going to have to shift it. So, thank you for joining. Thank you for listening. I look forward to coming to some of the schools and community centres and prisons and pupil referral units over the next year or so. And I hope that when young people see the film, your young people see the film, that they're impacted and that you've been impacted by this, and that you start more conversations with young people like this. This is just honest conversation.
Yes.
Honest conversation, no agenda. Just generally, I want to hear where he's coming from, and I tell him my experiences in order to help him to grow. So have a great evening.
Be sure to follow us as well.
Yeah, follow us. Follow Ellis on Instagram. Is Ellis Witter.
King Ellis W.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And follow.
And mine is Marns _MARNS_inspires.
Yes.
So thank you for watching. God bless.
Take care.
See you soon.